Hey everyone, good evening, welcome. I'm going to start off by painting a load of PVA glue onto the layout, the base. So off camera, I've done a lot of work in mounting this house model, chateau model, onto a plywood base. So basically I've created a one-piece plywood shape all the way around the base of the model, which undulates over the sort of contours of the diorama, as it were. So we come from sort of ground level up by the gates, which comes swooping down with a gentle slope to base level here, and at the same across the front of the house, which you can't see from this angle, but it sort of gently slopes down towards the corner of the building and then slopes from that corner down to this corner. So what I've done is created a plywood base that goes all the way around, and then I've fixed on another piece of plywood, which does need some attention, but I fixed on another piece of plywood around the fascia, which creates a sort of smooth solid base. And then on top of the plywood, I've added a coat of my favourite ready mix, which is, it's kind of like a filler, but it's designed for fixing tiles on, but it just gives a nice smooth finish. So I've given it a coat of grout all the way over the whole lot, blending it right up to the building. And what I'm going to do is around the side on the driveway, down this area here, and just in front of this section, I'm going to add some gravel, because that's what the real thing has. And the front is going to be tarmac, representing the road. So to put my gravel down, I'm coating the grout with a layer of PVA adhesive and sealer. Now, I could have gone straight neat onto the plywood base, but I decided it would be a much better and easier finish to go straight down onto the to go with a grout mix. Now the only problem is, it's like painting ceilings with white. Painting PVA onto a white surface isn't that easy to see. Maybe if I turned my light on, I'd be able to see better. I need to paint in a sort of grid, so I know where I've gone really. The only problem is sort of painting the glue onto the bits that you haven't glued. That would be the upside of painting straight down onto the plywood, is knowing where I've painted or glued. So I might just paint a little bit by a little bit, put some gravel down and then do a bit more. I want to be fairly thick so the gravel's got something to stick to. There are going to be a few plants growing against the side of the building there, so I'm not too bothered about it, about the glue washing right up onto the wall. Now I just switched to a slightly smaller brush, just to run the gravel right up to the doorway. Now for the gravel, I did have some ballast mix for model railways, but it's quite expensive. So what I've got is a mix of baked and sieved garden soil from the garden, mixed in with some very finely sieved tile grout, so the sort of the powdered stuff that you get to mix with water. I mean, the powdered grout I've had for a fair few years, so it's lasted a long time. It's about to run out now, but for this garden soil you can get as much as you want, but I've sieved this to create a kind of gravel texture. Not texture. It's a gravel sort of level sieving. So I've got two sieves. One I use for very fine stuff to replicate textured wall surfaces and soil, and my slightly bigger sieve is like this. It creates a gravel effect. Now obviously this is far too dark as it's going on right now, so once it's all set I will give it a blast of grey. Oh, it's actually quite a tan colour, so I'll give it a blast of a tan coloured with the airbrush, and then obviously just try and do a bit of weathering with some washes, just so it's not even. So I'm doing little more than sprinkling it on with my fingers. I want to ensure a good consistency. I'm not too bothered about being little white gaps showing through the board, because the whole lot, as I say, is going to be airbrushed to get the colour I want. Which is another plus point for making your own. You don't have to sift through all the different products, different types of gravel you can get. If I've just made my own, I can colour it whatever colour I want. And the aim is to be quite frugal with this, and once it's dried and settled in I can just tip it up or vac off the excess and reuse it. Obviously using something like a stocking or a sock over the top of the vacuum cleaner nozzle to save the vacuumings. Thank you for likes and sharing. Let me just see if I can share with some of the usual suspects. I don't always remember to share when I'm online. There we go, there's a few. Right, so that's a bit down for now. I've forgotten I'd already done this bit, but I'll just sort of blend into where I've got to and do a bit more. I'm going over where it's already glued, it doesn't matter. But this this all-purpose PVA sealer is quite thick. You do want a fairly thick glue when you're putting it down for the gravel to settle into. And it's amazing how much difference starting to set your model onto a base really makes. Starts to make it feel more like a model diorama. It's always my favourite part of making a model, next to scribing stone, but adding the base really kind of lifts it to the next level. And you spend so long making the structure, it's nice to then finally sort of blend it into a landscape setting. There's not much garden with this one. It's very much a sort of town centre house. It's got a courtyard and a little bit of land with it, but it's basically bordered straight onto the roads with not very much garden. Essentially, it wasn't built as a originally. It wasn't built as a house. It was a gatehouse, part of the city walls or the town walls, and then eventually sort of became a business. It's had various incarnations, but it's never been a country sort of house with big swooping ornate lands. It's very functional. They do have a lot of plants, but they're mostly in planters and little sort of plant beds around the courtyard, which I'll attempt to make I've got some plants to run up the side of the wall here, but I need to put the gravel down first, which is why I'm working on this. And in this kind of heat that we have at the moment, it shouldn't actually take too long to set. I want to be quite frugal with this. So, I mean, one thing I could do is just leave it the thickness that it is and pour some liquid glue over the top of it to seal it in place. You're slightly tipsy again, ain't you, cat? Oh dear. Of course, because you can't hear anything, you won't have been able to hear that. So what I was saying is I could leave it the thickness of gravel that it is right now and just flood the whole area with solvent and then a thin layer of watered down PVA. That would fix everything in place. And I'm not sure how far I've glued up there, so I'll just stop for the moment. But I don't want to use up too much, to be honest, so what I will do is just wait for it all to set and back it up, and then if I have enough left over, I can carry on. I do know that I went into that doorway, so I'll have to just throw some in there. If it settles on bits that I don't want it to, I can just brush it off afterwards. So I want to come over as far as about here with the gravel, because this bit's kind of unknown. I'm going to have to make that bit up. When I say it's unknown, it's in reality there's a building there, but we've decided not to include that. So it's a little bit of artistic license as far as that area goes, so it's kind of going to blend round to where the road is. Going to have lots of little bits of plant and growth, etc. against the base of the building. So there are a couple of bits where I've managed to brush a bit of my grout against the wall, and I'm not too concerned about that because eventually I'm going to have a little bit of foliage creeping up along that edge, so it doesn't matter. I must remember to get a smaller brush to go right up to the edges. Excuse the arm. I also must remember to wash my brush because it's a decent brush this that I've used and I don't want it coated in yeah. Now I've just realised there's a big thick lump of grout there that I don't want, so I'm just going to try and prise it off because it's going to end up with a, excuse me, shaking. I've lost my scalpel. That's why I'm using that bit of set square. I don't want a huge lump there because it's going to look a bit unrealistic, so I'm just scratching that off. And now I can just paint back over there again. It's okay against the walls, but I don't want it right up to the doorway because that's not going to look right. Right, so a bit more gravel. The other great thing about using bits of grout is that that's designed to be mixed with water to set hard. So if it mixes with the PVA as well, it's going to encourage it to set better. Of course, when I spray the gravel, I'm going to have to make sure all the walls are masked off. There's just a bit off screen that you can't see there, but I've just gone right to the edge. Now I've just got a bit more to do. I'm going to carry on right up to the top of the driveway as far as the gate. So let me just see if I can move this a little. We'll go up here. I do want to fill these plant beds as well with some soil mix before I can add to that. You can tell it's settling in quite well already by the fact that it's not coming off too much when I rub through. I don't know if you can see there, I've just got a little light switch that I've now installed on the side. So all that's coming together quite nicely. And in reality as well, there's a few small buildings on this section, but I've decided to leave those off as well, because looking at the model would quite obscure quite the more decorative aspects of the chateau. So it's allowing a clearer view. Saying that, I do have to install a tree into that courtyard, but it's going to be a smaller version of what's there in reality, just for the purposes of again, not obscuring the main part of the house too much. I have a little wall to install just in this corner here, but not yet. Now the gravel just kind of blends as far as the gateway. I'm just going to have to paint that section with my smaller brush. I've just used the wrong brush. That was my good dry brush that I just picked up by accident then. Same colour handle as the other part, the other one. Never mind. Quick wash and we're all fine. So I should really glued the gateway in. Or the gate in, should I say. I could try snapping it off and fixing it back on again afterwards. I don't really want to. Just paint a bit of gravel behind. And around the edge. I think I've managed to get a little bit of grout right on the base of that gate, but I'm going to scratch that off with my scalpel when it's all properly set. Alright, now I'll just finish off with a bit more gravel there. With the amount of gravel that this is needed, I would have used up several bags of off-the-shelf stuff, so this has saved me a lot of funds. Just sprinkle a bit behind there. The gravel done. So now ideally I just need that to set overnight. I'll just put the lid on my tub. And I've just remembered I really need to put something in the planting area. What I'm going to do with that is just put some thicker stuff in. I'll put some gravel in and then top it up with a base of finer soil. So let me just spin it around a little and I'll switch my light over. So I've got this little kind of planting bed just around the edge of the courtyard. I'm going to need to put some soil in, so I'll just liberally coat the inside with some glue. Oops, earthquake. I've just lost my decorative black sheet. Let a bit of light in there so it's not all bad. Wash my brush. Clunking noise, I just need to add a bit more gravel in there. It is rather a lot. It doesn't really matter right now. I'm going to top that up with some finer stuff. This is very thinly fisted. Oops, I didn't say that. Very thinly sifted. Powdered grout. So this is the stuff I usually use to make my rendered surfaces. Again, just sprinkling it onto the PVA glue. What I'm going to do here is just add a little bit of watered down PVA into the mix to fix it. Once it's all dry, I can then give it a coat of like dark brown or black wash to make it more soil covered. Covered? I can't speak tonight. Coloured. There we go. And again, I'll use a vac to get rid of all the excess bits we've got there. I realise I've lost my dropper. I haven't used it in ages, and it was on the shelf behind me. I've had to take the shelf down. Just excuse the rattling a minute whilst I look for a bottle. This is one of those cases where I'm going to make do with something else right now because I can't find what I'm immediately looking for. But the moment I use something else, I'll find the other thing. I thought I'd found something useful then, but it's all gunged up. This doesn't bode well. Please bear with me a minute. I'm trying to decant some spirit into a smaller receptacle. There's a word for you. Receptacle. We don't often hear that word too much, do we? There we go. I found a tiny sieve. I need a tiny sieve. Fortunately, I can't show you the rest because my bottle of isopropyl alcohol is a bit big. I can't fit it on screen. But I'm just decanting a small amount of isopropyl alcohol into a dropper bottle. And the purpose of that will become clear in a minute. So there we go, a little bit of isopropyl alcohol in. And that is just going to soak into the grout to hopefully I can't think of what am I trying to do here? What does it do here? It disperses the surface tension, or breaks the surface tension, that's the word. It breaks the surface tension on top of the fine powder, which will enable me to just drop on some watered down PVA, because if I don't do it like this, then the PVA will just pool on top. It won't settle. I need some watered down PVA, and that must be in the same place as the little droplet bottle I was after. So again, I'm just going to have to think about something for a minute. I thought I was being good tonight and getting together absolutely everything that I need, but I haven't, and I haven't. So I'm just going to pour a little bit of PVA out into a tub, if I can find one, so I can then water it down and add it to the mix that I've just put down. I just need to find myself a tub. That one will do. And then something I can just scrape a little bit of PVA out. Just a little bit of water. Okay, I'm just going to mix that up. This is the quickest thing I could find, which was a little paint tub that I've previously used. I'm just going to mix that up. It would have been better using hot water or warm water, because it would have enabled the glue to mix quicker. But we're going off limited resources right now. Kind of making use of what I can. So I just mix that up with a paintbrush. Again, I'm going to need to pour that into a dropper so I can pour it better, because it's not going to pour very well from this tub. It's all frothing up. So let me find another dropper bottle quickly. There we go. These things are very, very, very useful. It's just got a little nozzle top. This is actually a different one to the one I've just found. So I'm just going to try and very carefully decant the watered down glue using my little sieve. It's taking its sweet time because there's obviously little bits of clumps of glue in there. Once it's in, I can then just seal it up. I'll just give it a shake. I'm going to drop that onto the soil mix. And hopefully you can see it kind of soaking in. If I'd done that neat, sorry, onto the unsoaked gravel grout mix there, it would just pool on top. I mean, it is pooling to an extent, but it's soaking in as opposed to sitting like little globules on top. So this will soak into that grout and set rock hard, he says. I'm not too concerned about little pools of glue, just as long as it all sets. When I say little pools of glue, I mean you do see little spots of white glue there, which will stay on top. But for now, that will just continue to soak into that grout mix. And with that done, I'm going to spin round yet again and go back to the rear side. Because what I want to start doing is adding a little bit of plant growth to the side. Now I can continue to do that without waiting for this to set, because I can always spray that after the event. What we've got going on is a little bit of plant framing. There are a few little sort of wire grids stuck to the wall to encourage growth, and rather than making those out of lots and lots of pieces of thin wire, I'm just going to cheat a little by drawing them on with a pencil. You're not going to see most of these, so because they're going to be quite thin, we're just getting the essence of it with a pencil. Good evening, Ray. How's Ray doing tonight? Or this afternoon, this evening, whatever sort of time frame you're in. You're working. So what I'm going to do over the top of this is add some climbing plants. Now obviously this bit of wire work in the real life has been put in to encourage growth. Now most of this, there is one here, but most of it's hidden, so there's no point drawing that bit on. So I'll just put a few more where there is. Some exposed areas. Because of the textured surface of this wall, it's blunting the pencil quite quickly. I could do with sharpening it to get a finer point. Landscaping time now, yes, definitely. It's the fun part. Well, not to say that the rest of it isn't fun, but I always like I always like the landscaping aspect because it starts bringing the whole model to life. So just before you joined, I've added all the gravel to the areas that need gravel. And I still need to sand off the surface that I've created to make the tarmac roadway for the road at the front and the side. But I need to do a bit more sanding before I get to that part, so don't worry about the colour, it's just a base layer. I've just sprinkled some homemade gravel onto the surface, and I'm going to colour that a sort of tan grey colour eventually. But right now we just have the base layer. Now, next bit I'm going to do is I'm going to use this pan scrub. It's like a very coarse nylon. You see it has, even without doing anything to it at all, it has quite a nice sort of vegetation aspect to it. Now what I'm going to do is use this as the base to create a nice sort of climbing bush. I'm not sure what entirely the real thing is called, but I'm going to create the shape of the bush, and I'm going to use that as the base and then start to just add a little bit of texture on top of that. So let me push that a little bit further back so I've got something to work with. Now, unfortunately, you can't really draw on this, so I'm just going to have to do it by eye. I want to create the basic shape first. It's going to be about that tall. So using my thumb, I just use a pair of scissors to form the shape. Now, if you've seen one of my videos on YouTube, it's the one that sort of kind of went viral and really got me noticed. But I did a video on how to make a hedge out of a simple pan scourer. This is not quite the same thing, but it's the same thing that you top them with. But anyway, I used a pan scourer to make a hedge, and it's very effective. But what I did was I used both the scrubby part, which is this bit, and the foam for the foamy bit. I used a coffee grinder to grind down the foam to give me some nice sort of foliage sort of shape. Foliage pieces. So I just need to cut out around the doorway. As you can see, that's given me a nice kind of almost instant hedge shape, but it's not quite right. I want to be able to work with it a bit better. So I'm going to kind of pull and tease the edges so they're not as harsh. So probably a little bit too thick, but I think we can live with that. And obviously it's not going to grow thick straight from the floor, so it's going to fly off a bit. So I'm going to thin that down a bit. You see in profile I'm going a bit thinner. Kind of a model making indeed. I like to be able to find everyday things that you can kind of make stuff. I did a video on how to make realistic looking autumn trees with tea leaves. So you can use tea leaves for ground cover, you can use them for making leaves with, and you don't have to have used them for making cups of tea first. It's just, obviously if you are doing, it's excellent recycling. But these are very cheap kind of scouring pads. Like I say, it has a lovely texture. I've experimented with running these through the coffee grinder to see what kind of results you can get. I'm probably going to make a video on that at some point when I find myself with a bit of spare time. But this will be a good little section on how to use one to create a edge. So I'm just thinning off the edges so it's not quite as sharp and looking like it's been cut with a pair of scissors. So So something like a pair of crimping shears would be really good, you know, if you had access to a pair of crimping scissors. Now I'm sure I had some. Can't for the life of me remember what I did with them, or think what happened to them. But anyway, just a normal pair of scissors for this bit. I'm just going to thin off that area there. And then really I just want to tug a little bit at the edges just to tease out some of those fibres so they're not, like I say, so they're not as trimmed. Test it against there again. Whoops, it's fallen over. You see, most of that trellis work that I've just done is disappearing. I think it's perhaps a little bit thick, so I'm just going to tug at some of it. Thin it out. Now I can use some of these sections for I'm pulling off. I can use some of those for other bits of foliage base. Now at the very top, obviously, it's going to get a bit straggly. So we can really sort of tease that out. You see, like that, so it's not as neatly pruned because it's towards the top and it's all the new growth. So we've gone from neatly trimmed topiary to something a bit more unkempt. So there's the base starting to come together there. I just realise it's not quite as straight, possibly at the bottom. So we'll just taper it off a little to make it look more like it's kind of growing upwards. Now that's done, what I want to do is add some leaves. Oops, it's fallen over. Leaves are very easy to do. I'm going to have to do, let's put this to one side so I'm not losing it. Okay, so what we've got for leaves is some actual leaf mix. This is not homemade, this is some stuff that I've got off the shelf. I've not got very much of it left now, but it's got quite a nice texture to it that resembles real leaves in model form. So I've got some dark green there, and then I've got some lighter green in here. Again, not very much left. I can't remember where I got it from, which is a pain. But I should be able to get some more from somewhere. Now what I'm going to do here for speed is I'm going to use hairspray to stick it down, which is just this cheap extra hold is important because it's stickier hairspray. Now this is water based, it will react with water, so it's important that you don't get your model work wet, which I'm assuming you're not going to take it into the shower or leave it outside in the rain, but if it was to get wet then the glue becomes ineffective. Now I'm just going to give that a blast, but I'm going to have to do that off camera because I don't want to get the model covered. So I'll just do that over a box in the corner. Give it a really big spray so you can see it glistening with moisture now. Now, the best thing to do here to sort of save on material is to just sprinkle the foliage over the top of the box. So the excess is caught in the box, obviously. It's easier to pick up if it falls into the box. Now, obviously we've got a base layer of the pan scrub, and the foliage on top just starts to lift it, give it a bit more of a natural look. So now I want to give it another spray. That's going to fix what I've already got down, but it's also going to give me a layer of glue so that I can just sprinkle a highlight of lighter coloured leaves onto. I don't want to completely cover this now, but we've got a base layer of darker green, and I'm just going to highlight that now with some lighter leaves. But I don't want to cover it because we don't want to undo all our hard work with the dark. So like I say, I don't want to completely cover it, but just do enough to give it a bit more depth. Now, one final blast with the hairspray to hold it in place. Now you can see it's darkened off, but it will lighten up when the glue is dried, or the hairspray glue is dried. I'll just put the leaves back on that, the lid back on there, sorry. Now, because I'm going straight onto an MDF base with paint on it, PVA is going to work a treat. So I'm going to use that same PVA that I used before. I'm just going to paint some glue straight onto the wall here. Painting it onto the wall rather than onto the bit of foliage there, because it's going to be easier to manipulate that way. So around the doorway and then up onto this fake trellis. There's some materials where PVA doesn't really work. Like if I was painting it onto Foamex, it doesn't really like to be painted onto Foamex, not unless you've given it a very good priming. Mind you, saying that covering of acrylic paint is usually good enough. But here we go. Right, we're going to try and glue this down now. I'm going to go, still very wet, and ideally you could wait overnight for this to set. But unlike using something like super glue, which would end up with your fingers completely covered, we can start to add some growth there like that. Now I want to add a little bit of foliage around the base of there because there's a little bit of ground area, but I'm just going to leave that for the moment whilst we work on the walls. Now as we continue on, there's a lot more plantation. I'm not going to bother with the trellis on here because it's going to be mostly hidden, but we've got some smaller growth coming up that side now. So I'm not going to use a pan scrub for this bit, I'm going to use some sea foam, which is this stuff here. Oops, I just realised my laptop's not plugged in. Just bear with me a minute. So I need my laptop on because that's where my reference photo is that I'm working off. Right, actually for this bit, change my mind, I'm going to use some coconut fibre because it's just some very thin strands of growth coming up the side there. So this is some coconut fibre that's actually come from a hanging basket liner. And where are we? On the side of this window here. So I can use some of those fibres to just represent some climbing plants. Now ideally this wants to be a more grey colour because this is a bit too brown. So I probably want to paint it. And as I'm sat there wondering, I'm still actually wondering whether I can use sea foam instead. I need to use a few straggly pieces if I'm going to do that. Actually, I think I'm going to be better using sea foam because it's not as unwieldy. I'm going to use a few pieces of sea foam, like I've said, to represent the climbing plants. But like I've said, they really need to be grey. These are more grey sort of branch structure rather than a light brown. So to that extent, I'm going to get a an acrylic colour if I've got any left of anything. I think this is all dried up. No, we've got some left in here. Kind of really at the end of the pot on this, but this is a Citadel colour called Storm Vermin Fur, so it's like a grey-brown, brown-grey, which will be an ideal colour for painting my branches. So it would be nice to kind of do it all in one. I'm going to have to do it in stages. Again, something like this will be much easily done with an airbrush. And in fact, I might do future ones with the airbrush. And if I had a rattle can in the garage, that would be ideal. But I don't have anything. So I'll just be very careful. Topmost points are going to be covered with foliage, so it's not as imperative that they get covered. I'm just going to do the lower down ones. I'll move that coconut fibre to one side. The coconut fibre is really good for creating branch structures, but I've decided in this instance I'm using the little bits of sea foam I've cut that I've got left over. Now I'm just going to I'm just going to blast this with the hairdryer. I'll just do it off camera so I don't blast off everything else. It won't take long to dry, I just want to quickly dry off the paintwork so it's not going to end up getting bits on that I don't want bits on. So for this one I've got an even finer sort of lighter green powder that I'm going to use to create the structure of the foliage. So again, I need to give it a quick blast with hairspray for glue. So I'm going to hold on to it with the tweezers and just give it a blast off camera. There we go. This is another batch of homemade foliage that I've made. So this has actually been made with, I've got to verify. Sorry about that, I've got to verify. This has been made with some really fine ground foam. So this is insulation foam that I've used in the coffee grinder to grind down to a very fine consistency. So they can use this for some finer leaf build-up. And on top of that, I'm just going to put a little bit of extra I need to open a tub and hold it at the same time. Let me just try and put this down. I should be like Blue Peter and have open tubs of everything that I need all at the same time. Like I say, I thought at least I've got my tubs out to hand. Now I'm just going to use some more vibrant colour. Now the beauty of this is if it does end up a bit too vibrant, then I can always tone it down with some paint, but that's just that's gone on quite nicely. So again, I'm just going to give that a final blast of hairspray. Now this is going to be trickier than the original one because it's a lot finer and hard to stick down. So I think I'll be better off actually painting the reverse of this with glue rather than trying to paint the wall. One I made earlier, yes, I definitely need those, but it's not very helpful if I'm showing you how to make something from scratch. But sometimes I have to do stuff off camera. So let's just paint a liberal amount on the stalks. The hard part is getting the foliage stuck down. Yeah, I've done this before with super glue, and it's a little on the messy side. Not to mention that you sometimes get nice big shiny patches where the glue has gone where you don't want it to. It's definitely not as easy as the other one was. I'm just going to go against what I've just said and just put a little bit of glue on there. If I've got any patches showing, I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit of foliage over the top of that to mask it in. But I want to now try and persuade that to stick. Come on. It's very fiddly indeed, yes. Come on, let's stick on, please. Don't make me look like a fool. I'm going to cheat because I'm being impatient, and I'm just going to stick a little bit of super glue behind it. Hopefully it's not going to stick me to it. There we go, that's exactly what I wanted. It's now stuck to the wall. Except that little bit of branch is not going where I want it to. Let's come back to that in a little while. Give it a chance to stick down, and then I can sort that bit of branch out. If in doubt, super glue the hell out of it. Right, now I need to find another bit of foliage for the other side. And this bit of seafoam will do. There's a few bits stuck that I don't want. The majority of it is going to be growing up the side there. And I think this is a perfect piece. I just need to stick some foliage to it. I'm going to learn from my mistake there. Not mistake as such, but I'm going to glue the rear of that straight down. But again, I need to colour it black. Not black, white. Just so it's not so sort of fake looking. The seafoam does have a nice natural colour to it, but it's a bit too pale. It has been a while, 2D Panda, how are you doing? So I just paint the thicker parts of the foliage. I'm not going to do the reverse. I'm not going to do the reverse of this one this time. Just the front, because there's no point doing the reverse if it's not going to be seen. Like I say, I'm doing this a little bit on the rushed side. Ideally, you want to make your plants and then leave them overnight to dry, so they're much easier to manhandle, fix into place. So Mr. Panda, I'm currently making the Chateau model. Pan up a little bit, I've lost my black backdrop, it fell off the wall. So you've just got some shiny window in there. I'll try and put it up to get some decent photographs. So I'm just going to give that quick blast of the hairdryer off camera, because otherwise everything's going to go flying. That's probably enough. There we go. And this has got some darker foliage again on it, so I'm going to give it a blast with the hairspray and then use my dark foliage mix. Okay, so we're nice and glistening with glue there. So I'll use the dark foliage mix. Try and clump in places to represent a thicker bit of growth. Again, I'm just layering more glue on. I want it to be fairly clumpy in certain places. Slowly building up the levels. And then I want to give that a little highlight, not with the leaf this time, but I'm going to use this slightly powdered foliage just to bring out a little bit of lightness in places, like so. Again, ideally that needs another mix. The blast of the hairdryer. There we go, so that's a much bigger one. This is going to go in here. Now as you can see, we're going to start to slowly lose bits of detail, but that was always going to happen. Now, like I say, I'm going to go down the speedy route and try and be a bit careful with super glue. So I'll put some drops of glue onto that bit of scrap card there, and I'm going to use this skewer to just put glue where I want it, namely on the trunk and on a couple of branches at the top. I'm going to have to be a bit careful about placement when it gets a bit further up. So initially I just want to stick the main sort of root part, trunk part onto the wall. I'm not going to glue my fingers. Good evening, Corey, how are you doing? So I'm running out of this stuff, but just give me a helping hand. I'll just put a bit of activator on the wall there. And let's get that trunk glued on. Look at that, perfect first time. So because that's glued quite quickly, I'm going to leave it. I'm not going to tempt fate. I'm going to leave that, wait till it's all set, and then only after that I'm going to I'm going to put some glue behind it to hold it in place better. I just got off work out. Well, it's very nice of you to come in and say hi. Right, we need some more growth kind of up here now and into this area. So again, we've got lots of straggly bits of sea foam. Good evening, Pip. Good evening, Pip, my good friend. We've got some nice bits of sea foam now to use for putting up here. So if I kind of plan it out first rather than going full blast into it, although that bit of stalk would have been very nice, the top end of it's better, so I'll strip off the bottom. And I want to start planning on how this is going to fit. So, oops, missed the camera. So I'm just going to leave that there a minute. Find some other bits. Now these bits were no good for making trees with because they're a bit straggly, but they're absolutely perfect for creating, at the very least, the structure for these bits of hanging plant, climbing plant. You can see it's a very natural looking product because it is natural. So you can kind of create any kind of structure you want, but you just have to be a bit careful with how you apply it. So I'm just roughly and loosely holding it up against the walls there to try and work out how this is going to work. Now, one plant does actually grow all the way over this section, and then it clings onto that climber there. Where do I get my model bits? I get them from all over. It's very hard to say. I get laser board from a laser suppliers. I get Foamex from a model shop called modelshop.co.uk. The gravel is homemade. Some of the scenic foam is homemade. It's not an easy one to answer that, to be honest, because I use a lot of different suppliers that I've sort of gained over the years. Camera's gone to sleep again. So there are a couple of flowers. I think it's like a climbing rose or something, this little bit here, so I'm going to have to use a little bit of colour eventually. But for now I just want to put the greenery on. Whereabouts are you studying architecture, if I may ask? Where is it? Ah, see, there you go. That's the beauty of having. That's the beauty of having your client. North of Scotland. I was going to say that if you were sort of London based, there's an excellent architectural model shop that I use for lots of my stuff down in London. But they do internet. They do internet shopping. So they're a shop called modelshop.co.uk. That's their website. Their actual company name is 4D Models, but they have absolutely amazing amounts of architectural modelling resources. So that's somebody you want to look at. I'm not sure you're not supposed to properly advertise other places on here, but until I get told off about it, I'll just continue to. I don't have any affiliation with them. I just like their stuff. Okay, so I'm going to start with this one. Good evening, Ashley. I'm going to start with this one. This one's going to have to be built up in several pieces. So if I make a start with the first branch. So I just want to add a little bit of grey colour to these to make it a little bit more realistic. It just looks a little pale and artificial on its own. Sometimes it works really well on its own, sometimes you need to embellish it a little bit. I think 4D models might even do seafoam, I can't remember. So again, I just need to blast that with the hairdryer quickly. Sorry, I have to do that off camera, otherwise there'll be gravel blasting absolutely everywhere. And again, I'm going to use my hairspray. And we're going to use some light green leaf cover for this bit. We just want leaves over the top part. Hairspray actually darkens this one off quite a lot, but it should lighten up when it dries. Okay, so again, for speed, I'm just going to use some super glue very, very carefully at the back of it. Although PVA should work, it's not quite as instant grabbing as I want. I'm going to supplement it with a little bit of PVA there. Alright, I just missed what I was doing, so I want it to grow over the side of the door and then up the wall there, like so. That's that section. I just want to slightly try and slowly build that bit of growth up there as if it's sort of spreading out from that initial growth point and spreading around. So that little piece will be perfect. I just need to paint it. Sorry about this. I've just not got everything on to hand. My water bottle is a little bit off screen, off desk. Right, where did that piece go now? There it is. This one here. So again, I just want to paint the bottom bit of it grey. Give it a quick dry. Then again, trusty hairspray. Another blast with the hairdryer, not the hairdryer, the hairspray, not hairdryer, the hairspray to seal it in. And we need to try and glue that in place. I need a better little pad of something to glue with rather than that bit of masking tape. Don't have many things to hand. I'm just going to use this little bit of card I've just found. So I'm just off camera going to put a little bit of super glue down. Stick a little bit onto the back of here. Now obviously it's going to be slightly tacky from the hairspray as well, which will help. That will just nicely glue down there. Then I want to add a bit more sort of growing upwards to fill that area a bit better. So it's a rinse and repeat. Same process, just a bit of paint on the substructure, darkening it off a bit. Give it a quick blast with a hairdryer so I don't get grey paint everywhere. a quick blast with the hairdryer, and then a quick blast with the hairspray. I'm keeping getting those mixed up. Straight onto the hairspray glue. You can also use spray varnish for this if you had a little bit more patience with waiting and a bit more sort of funds available. It's a bit more expensive. Hairspray, like I say, it's very cheap. It's a very cheap way of making sort of foliage fixing glue. Sorry, I'm just a bit off camera there, aren't I? Now my stick's getting covered in foliage, so it's not doing a very good job of gluing. That should be enough. Is that a cat wanting to come in? I think it is. So I'll just add that bit there. Like that. That's looking quite nice now. So that's over this door here. So just at the side of there, I think I might have another straggly branch coming up here, and then we've got a bit more growth, which is what I've picked this lot up for. So I need to put some more growth. In fact, I'll just finish off this bit with a little straggly branch, and then I need to put some more sort of growing up there to finish that bit off. So if I can find myself a small bit of seafoam that I can use for that straggly part. This will do. I just learned my speed lesson here that I don't need to paint all round, just the front of it, because the back of it's going to be glued straight to the wall. Dried off, give it a blast of glue, and my cat's asking to be let in, so I'm going to have to go let him in a minute. Another blast just to hold it all in place, and then we'll get some glue painted behind it. Now this is quite lightweight, so I might be able to actually get away with painting PVA behind it. With the other one I was struggling because the sheer weight of the foam foliage just wasn't letting it hold in place. There we go, rather like that. He's wandered off. Like with the other one, I'm going to use these bits to sort of build up the structure, climbing up the wall there. It would be an awful lot easier if I could just stick the structure onto the wall first and then put the foliage in, but I'm just going to end up with foliage stuck everywhere where I don't want it, so we have to be patient and we have to build it all up like I've been doing. It's fairly quick once you get into a system. I'm going to try and get this bit of wall done before I have to break and let my cat in. He's been rather impatient at the doorway there. I tell you what, somebody really needs to invent spray super glue. That would be probably really dangerous, to be honest. But I could really make use of it right now. Some sort of instant glue spray that fixes more solid things into place. Hairspray works really well for sticking foliage on, but when you want to stick something onto more solid surfaces, it's not quite as effective. So I'll just put a bit of super glue down onto the stems, and then I'll just put a bigger bit of PVA onto the foliage there. The stem should hold in place on the wall with the super glue, and the foliage should stick in place with the PVA. Any bits that have yeah, it would be really deadly, wouldn't it? It's not a great idea. Any bits of white glue that's left over, or showing up, I can then stick some extra bits of foliage on top of. Persuade that to stick a bit more with some super glue. Where did I do? Oh, there we go. Right, he's gone. Hopefully he's gone to the other door. That's my cat, or one of my cats. The cats that go out. Right, bit of grey paint. Yeah, I'm sorry, if you don't like the camera sideways, then I do apologise. Most of my regular watchers do switch their phones onto an angle to watch. I'll be honest with you, I want to film sideways so it gets more of my work on screen, and also because I can then use the footage to create landscape format videos. This kind of work doesn't really show up so well on in portrait mode. So, like I say, it's I'm shooting sideways on purpose. It's not really it's not always a chatty place, so you don't really need to see the comments. But if you do, you can always kind of watch with your head on one side. Excellent, yeah, see, that's exactly it. It's not too much of a hardship to switch your phone sideways. And if you're watching on, I don't know how it actually looks on a desktop, to be honest. I think it just, yeah, it's a bit, I suppose it's harder to turn a laptop on its side, isn't it? Right, I'm just going to be more dangerous with the super glue application and put it straight on. So let's just spread this out a bit that way. It's stuck to my fingers. That's the dangerous part, when it sticks to your fingers instead. Okay, there we go. Just move some of these stems over. I think we just kind of need one more there now, and it's kind of done. And I'm going to have to put some foliage right at the base there to represent some ground cover. Oh, you're watching on an iPad. Well, there you go then, Ashley. I nearly called you Dainty then. I suppose you are Dainty. Like I say, it's mostly for me. It's mostly for me, the reason why I'm landscape, but if it does actually show more of the... It shows more of the work off, especially when you're working on something so big like this. If I was in portrait mode, you'd only be able to see the very sort of focus of my attention at the front, in the middle. You'd only be able to see this bit, whereas you can see the more of the model this way around. Oops, went a little bit too far there, so that's our next bit of stick. More hairspray. Well, that's good to know, Rory. I took a few days off last week to catch up on some work. So there's a great model making community on social media, whether it be on TikTok, on YouTube or Twitter. But I post all my lives back down onto Twitter. Sorry, no, YouTube. Which is why I film in portrait mode. So if you do happen to miss the live, you can then go back and re-watch them, either at normal speed or at speeded up speed, and get a quick recap. Right, like I say, I'm just going to go. So I've posted pretty much everything that I've done live on this model onto my YouTube channel. There are certain bits that I've, for one reason or another, that I've done off camera, whether it's because I felt that I just needed to crack on with something and didn't want the added stress of filming it at the same time, or whether I just didn't feel like it. But yeah, that's me being honest. Sometimes I just don't feel like working in front of a camera, and it's easier to get things done without that extra stress and hassle. Right, I want to add a little bit of colour to those rose climbers. I'm probably going to get the colour wrong here, but I'm going to use a vivid. Sawdust here. So it's probably more pink, but I don't have pink. I've got red. Oh no, tell a lie. I do have pink. Sorry, I've just cracked the camera. I know it's probably not helpful for you, Rory, but well, not helpful for you just right now, but I do aim on making a video on how to scale models, and there's a little bit of it, the scale process, on my see, that's the colour I want. It's like a nice sort of pinky colour rather than red. There is a little bit of an explanation about how I make my drawings on an earlier part of the Chateau build, but I don't go into the process nearly as much as I wanted to. But scaling is it's quite easy once you get the knack of it. Right, now this isn't easy, doing it the way around that I'm going to do it, because really I want to sprinkle I want to sprinkle directly on top of it, but I can't do that because it's facing forwards. So I'm going to have to now try and be very inventive. Or very careful. Well, you see, that's what I use for creating this. This model here, this is the French Chateau. I've used client-supplied photographs and Google Earth to scale it up. So, I mean, the first thing you need to do is to work out what scale you're going to use. So for my in this instance, I'm using 176. No, that's wrong. I used to use 176 scale. I'm working in 1/50th scale. So every real life dimension is divided by 50 to get the scale. So if by using Street View or Google Earth, by using Google Earth, you can use the measurement tools on Google Earth to get your dimensions of the footprint. So, say for example, your footprint dimensions came in at 16 meters by 8 meters. You just divide 16,000 by 50 to get your scale measurements in millimeters. And if you're using 130 scale, you're like a bigger war diorama. Military model making diorama scale. It's like 132. So you just divide your real life dimension by 32. So like I say, I work in 176 scale usually, which is quite awkward sometimes. Because you get some weird dimensions. I could have just painted this on. It would have been fine if I'd just painted it on. And that probably would have been a better effect. Oh, thank you, Lab. Is it Lab Lover? Lab Lover 2? Ah, we're a dog fan. What I'm going to try and do is use my tweezers to gently place some little bits of coloured sawdust to represent rose flowers, rose petals. But I need a pair of unclogged tweezers to do this. Like I say, what I'd normally do is just I'd put some dabs of glue onto where I want it, and then sprinkle I'm trying to get my camera to move, but the tripod won't. The tripod won't play. When I say tripod, it's just a camera holder. Now you see, the problem is I'm going to end up with sawdust petals on the gravel. So I'm just going to put a sheet of. In fact, I was going to put my lid on the floor. I'm just going to put a sheet of paper just underneath to try and catch the petals. Like I say, I'm going to use a small vacuum cleaner to catch the excess. Vac up the excess gravel. If you're watching earlier, I put the gravel down with some neat PVA underneath, and I've put more than I need down, so I will need to use the vacuum cleaner with the nozzle extension to suck up the excess. So yeah, just work out your scale. A lot of architectural model makers purely because they're working to sort of big sizes. They tend to use rounded scales. When I say round, you know, something that's fairly easy to work out, like 1/50th scale, 1/100th scale, or 1/200th scale. 1/200th and, well, 1/100th and 1/200th are going to make really small models. I use 1/76 usually because it's a model railway scale, and that's where I started off making models for. So it's a scale I'm comfortable with using, and there's lots of sort of off-the-shelf products already suited to 1/76 scale, or 00 gauge as it's referred to in terms of model making in that respect. Now you see there, they're just some nice little effective little splashes of colour there. So yeah, so you divide by 1/76 if you're making 1/76 scale. It does give you some strange measurements sometimes, but when you're looking at something like a doorway, so a doorway there, you're looking at something like, depending on the size of your, depending on the size of your actual real life doorway, you're looking at measurements of something in the region of 24mm tall by 12mm wide. This one's an extra wide doorway in real life, so it does look a little bit bigger. But yeah, you can sort of figure out that those are the kind of dimensions you're looking for. Right, I want to try and convince that that little twig to move. So I'm going to use a bit of glue, super glue again. I really need a cocktail stick as opposed to a bamboo stick because these are far too unwieldy. I just forgot what drawer they were in for a moment. Well, I'm glad to help. Another good thing to sort of remember in a slightly different way is that 1/76 scale equates to 4mm to the foot. Thank you very much for the gift, you're very kind, Ray. So it equates to 4mm to the foot. Is that right? So 1mm equals 3 inches. Yes, 1mm equals 3 inches. Oh, that's such a mental strain. Maths isn't. Despite me being a scale model maker, maths isn't my strong point. I have to really think about stuff, but it does. It's one thing that does help. 1mm equals 3 inches. It's an odd one when you're working in metric most of the time. But there are certain things that are still referred to in imperial terms, like, you know, if you've got a 3-inch gate post, for example. So, you know, a 3-inch gate post will be 1mm square, or, for example, this is a different scale, but for example, these drain pipes here, your standard drain pipes are usually 3 inches wide. So so you can use a 1mm wide plastic rod to represent a scale drain pipe. You know, so that's why 1/76 is a good scale to work with, because, like I said, there are lots of off-the-shelf model making items you can use that are already scaled to the right scale. This is not sticking where I want it to. Maybe it will do now. Base there. And to do that, I'm going to use some static grass, just a little bit. Yeah, if you're still there, Rory, yeah, just using carbon scrap is a great method of model making for the first attempt. You just need to get a feel of how things work, you know, for building and what you're going to do. I'm working off one elevation here with a photograph. I'm going to have to go around the corner in a minute to see what that bit looks like, because I can't remember. But certainly for this section, I think we're slowly starting to look like I want it to. I'm probably being a bit impatient here because the gravel's a bit loose. Like you can see, it's lifting back off again. So I might have to come back to this tomorrow. I'm just being a bit impatient there because I like to be able to crack on with things. Okay, so I've just put some neat PVA down there, and now I'm going to use my tweezers to stick some bits of tall grass. This is, I think this is, I can't remember. I think it's 8mm, but it might be a bit bigger. So I just sprinkled some out onto a tub. I just want it to. I'm not going to use an applicator to put this down like I would do if I was putting grass down. I basically want to just make some standing up stalks. I think I'm going to have to go very soon because it's getting a bit busy outside. Basically, I'm just trying to clump them together. And then stick it at the base of this tree here. Oh, it's not really a tree, is it? It's a big climbing bush. Right, for anyone that's still watching, I'm afraid I'm going to have to carry on with the muted microphone because there are people in the kitchen in the next room that are being a bit noisy, and I really don't want their voices in the back of the video. So I hope you can bear with me being quiet for a bit. Okay guys, I'm going to call it a day at that part because I need to let some things properly dry in place now. So hopefully I can come back to it tomorrow. I'm going to suck up the excess gravel and airbrush it with a more buff tan colour and get that looking a little bit more realistic. Then hopefully I can sand off the edges of the roadway. It's the wrong lid, and we can start working on those. But there's still an awful lot of vegetation to work on, and I hope you've enjoyed this little bit here. And I'll speak to you all again soon. Cheers for watching, and good night.